You gonna stand? Should I stand too? Okay. I mean, if you have the energy to stand, should we get you a pedometer so you can dance more? No, honestly, I'm so excited to spend this next hour with you. In a way, I feel like Star Trek and the original series defined what fandom is today. I mean, it's the original, in my opinion, fandom, especially with the letter writing campaign and everything. And I just kind of want to start, in a way, in the present, before we go back and talk about, you know, the many years you've played the role. What have you, over the decades, learned from playing Chekhov?
What have I learned? I learned that the reaction to my contribution to Star Trek is vastly disproportionate to what I actually did.
You know, some would agree and many would disagree.
People are extraordinarily loving and forgiving, and they're there for you. If you do badly, there's got to be something really wrong with you, because they want to like you. So this is a wonderful place to be. I don't like getting here. I don't like flying anymore, but I love being with people who are supportive and whom, for the most part, I qualify that, but for the most part, think the way I do about life and people and humanity and what we can do that is good, and with what time we have here. So all of that is great. I love it.
Well, you bring up a really good point, and something that I think is really prevalent among the Trekker community is that Gene Roddenberry philosophy of, you know, not only forward-moving and forward-thinking, but of inclusion and diversity and just the exploration of technology and humanity. And so what did you learn from Gene? What was it like taking away sort of who he was as a person and working with him?
Well, I don't think I learned anything new. I think I came predisposed to think the way Star Trek is told. That's my upbringing. Technological stuff, I'm a total jerk. I know nothing about technology. I can do 5 things with my cell phone, and that's it. You know, don't try to ask me to do any more. But I do believe that we're in trouble. I don't want to make this. I'm so concerned about the way where we are now. There are people here who did not pay to hear me talk politics or philosophy. So I'm not going to address that unless I'm actually asked a question. But I think that there's a subliminal message, regardless of what the story was. The subliminal message is there are these 7 people on the bridge, and they're very diverse, and there's different ethnicities, different races, different creeds, and they're getting along, and they like each other, and they can work together. And wouldn't that be great if that's the way the world was? So I didn't learn anything. It just reinforced the feelings that I had. And as a consequence, I feel, so if I have to be labeled as an actor from a specific show and identified that like that for my whole life, my adult life, it's just as soon be Star Trek. It's something that I have respect for and that I care about. It's not all of who I am, but it's certainly, I'd just as soon be known for Star Trek than Gidget.
Well, you also were in another science fiction show that you've talked about being able to explore more the depth of the character on Babylon 5. And so I'm wondering if you can kind of share with us what that experience was like.
What Babylon 5 was like?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that was great. That was great. I had a terrific time. You know, Star Trek was from a different era. And it was literally a different class system in the film industry. We really did have, superordinate and subordinate performers. We had actors who were stars and actors who were supporting actors, and that's a euphemism because frequently we were more like bit players. We were movable furniture, and that's the way. It wasn't limited to Star Trek. It was the way the industry was. That you had the stars, and then you had the other people who were on the show, and I wasn't complaining because that's the environment in which I grew up. That's what I knew. That was the conditioning that I had experienced. But when I went on to do guest appearances on Babylon 5, it was already 20 years or more later, and the society of the industry had changed. They were more inclusive of all the cast members. Everybody was if they weren't all paid the same, they were at least the way they were approached was very similar. There was a camaraderie, there was a sense of companionship and fraternity, sorority that made everybody more equal. So when I came on, and of course there was the patina of Star Trek that preceded me, and so that when I came on Babylon 5, I was treated quite well. I was treated, and that meant I was treated like everybody else. And I thought that was great. We all got along. Bruce and Jerry and Claudia and Billy Mooney and everybody. They were all on the same level. It was the same, and so I loved that. And as also I was enraptured with the idea that I was not an expositional character. I wasn't there simply to help motivate them, or help perpetuate, or help, I know there's another word, help promote the storyline. I was there as a dimensional character. Star Trek, Chekhov, as were Sulu and Uhura, and to some degree Scotty, were there mostly to keep the action going in some way, but not introspectively, not so that you got to know who they were and how they felt. Babylon 5 was different. There was the whole background to this character. We knew a lot more about him. And and as a consequence, it was so much more fun to do. So there was that. And incidentally, I want to put a plug in, since we're talking about Babylon 5. The creator, J. Michael Straczynski, is an extraordinary individual. He wrote an autobiography called Becoming Superman, and I thoroughly recommend that you read that, because it's a story of tragedy and despair and horror, and then inspiration and courage, and it just turns into something else, and it gives you a sense of what you can achieve coming from the direst of circumstances. And I don't say that theatrically. I really mean it. It was incredibly bad, and he achieved, really the epitome of success in several fields. So it's called Becoming Superman. It came out last summer. And if you haven't read it, I think it's just a lesson in how to endure and find a way of succeeding the dire events in your life and becoming something better than that. Anyway, that's my promotion for the day. Oh, also, I laugh because it makes me a little nervous to say this. I do have my autobiography is coming out again. Thank you. It includes the first 50 years of my life, plus the last 20, which was not in the first edition. First edition was called Warp Factors. This one is called Beaming Up and Getting Off.
Which I love that title. What inspired you to amend your autobiography now? What was it? Time or life experience?
I was approached by a publishing company. They said that would you be interested in doing that? And I thought, yeah, I'd love to write. I love to write. I am. Sometimes I write well, and sometimes I don't write so well. But I knew this was something that I could do, and that I thought I had enough happen to me, and that I've learned some things in my senior years that would probably be reflected in the way I write now. That might be a little different than I wrote when I finished the first part in 1997. So it's been fun. I thoroughly enjoy that world of writing, and the nice thing is I'm not dependent on anybody. As an actor, you have to get the role, and you have to get the casting director to like you, and the director and the producer, and they check your popularity, and it becomes a whole ordeal that I have no control over. When you write, it's up to you. You sit in a room with a computer, and there's nobody to tell you what to do. And it's very organic, and it's a world that I can retreat to and feel very comfortable in. And I feel productive. It's hard staying viable when you're 83 years old, and I don't know 80% of the guests that are here. I've never even heard of them, and that's my problem, not theirs. 15-year-old kids who've won championships playing games, video games. I mean, that's the new world. That's, I sound like the prototypical, almost caricature of the old guy, who's grumbling, what you kids in here, newfangled stuff, I'm sort of that person.
Let me ask you this, okay? Because you make a really interesting point about writing, and you're only self-reliant and self-accountable when you're writing. And you also had talked about with Chekhov, you felt like movable furniture and the storylines weren't there for Chekhov. What would you write for Chekhov?
Well, actually, I'm willing to put him aside now. I was approached after this, many years after the series, to do this semi-professional series.
Web series, yeah.
And the episode was called "To Serve All My Days," and my initial response is a knee-jerk response. No, I don't want to do it. And then they told me what the story would be about. It was, if you remember the deadly years where everybody grows old, except for Chekhov, this would be a sequel where Chekhov suddenly grows old. And I thought, well, here's an opportunity to confront circumstances and the emotional and psychological situations that I never had an opportunity to confront. I mean, when I was doing Star Trek and television series, this dialogue was, Warp Vector 3, Captain, pretty much. The one time that they actually had me say more than a couple of lines, or maybe it was just line, but it was a challenge. Well, one time it was a challenge. That's the way I'll put it. It was when we looked out into space. We were supposed to be seeing some sort of anomaly, some sort of phenomenon that we had never seen before. And they had actually, because we didn't have, what we had was when we looked out into space, we saw the other people who worked on the show, the crew people, the people who did the lighting and the sound, and that's what we saw. So they put up a stanchion, a metal stanchion, with centerfold from Playboy. So my most challenging line in those 2 years that I was doing the series was, "Captain, I don't know what that is." So what were we talking about? Everybody.
Well, we were talking about writing for Chekhov, but I understand, you wanna leave kind of, you feel like you've wrapped up the character. Would that be appropriate to say?
Yeah.
Yeah?
So I guess the final part of my answer is, so I enjoy doing that. I enjoy going up there, working with people who are mostly dentists, who were very big fans of Star Trek and were wearing the uniforms. But I had a chance to develop the character more. It's like he died too soon. I had to disinter him and breathe some life into him for my personal benefit, to make him a dimensional being. And then when it came up again a couple of times when I did the films for television, again, it was a more mature Chekhov. That's a nice way of saying a bald Chekhov. But again, I had a chance to explore him, and I've explored him to death. So, praise be to God. I mean, I've had that, even if it's only been for me and not for the general public who didn't get to see those shows. I feel that I have given him enough life to let him die in peace. So.
Well, we'll miss him, but you did an amazing job portraying him, and we're all grateful for your performance. So let's go back to season 2, when you came on the show. When did you realize that Star Trek was going to have this impact on society and the fandom? When did you start to realize, what was your first encounter where you were approached by someone and they just told you how much the show meant to them? Or when did you realize the impact?
Well, the impact is a process. The realization is a process, because no one could have predicted the longevity, the durability of the concept, and the fact that we would still be involved in some tangential way all these years later. I mean, it's bizarre to think about, and nobody could have conceived it. No one. There isn't a human being alive that could know that when we were canceled in 1969, and Gene Roddenberry called us and said, "Well, it's been a pleasure working with you. Hope we can do it again sometime." Yeah, right, Gene. Yeah, so long. Now what do I do? Now what do I do with the rest of my life? And then when the Next Generation came out and it was wildly successful, I said, well, that's the end. Well, I'll never be invited to another convention again. Now what do I do with the rest of my life? And it keeps going. And for me, it was new each time we were revived in some way. And when we finally stopped making the movies, I said, okay, there's Next Generation, there's Deep Space Nine, there's Voyager, there's Enterprise, et al. Certainly now we are no longer part of the American or the film-going audience consciousness. We're done. We're done. But then we developed a kind of a sense of veneration. Forgive me for using such a elaborate word for what has happened, but it's, we become like the Antique Roadshow. We've developed a pattern of it that is a consequence of our still being here, and people still have a measure of respect for what we've done, and they are still interested in seeing us. It makes me a little uncomfortable because I want to be viable. I want to be part of the present. I want to feel that if you're saying that you love my work, that it's not only in the past tense, that I'm still making a contribution. Well, it's come to the point where I realize that that's probably not going to happen. So I am thinking about backing off a little bit from Star Trek because it's awkward. I mean, I love the fact that you people are here. I love the fact that you respond positively. But it's a little awkward, you know? I don't think I'm done. I think I can still make contribution. And I say this, please, if there's any self-pity in my voice, disregard it, because I don't mean it. I'm totally grateful for the enthusiasm that has perpetuated over these 5 or 6 decades. But it just feels a little uncomfortable not to say thank you for that, and what about what I'm doing now? Anyway, I'm rambling. That happens when you're 83, you ramble.
We love to hear you ramble. You guys love to hear him ramble, right? Come on. You're a legend, Walter. I know you guys want to ask questions, so there's 2 mics in either of the aisles, and we'll get through as many as we can. And while they're getting the lights up, I want to ask you, everybody in here loves you, and they love Star Trek. What are you passionate about? What do you geek out about? What do you love to watch or read?
In terms of entertainment?
It could be anything. No, it doesn't have to just be entertainment. You could say yoga or wine or...
Yeah,
that's me.
Geez, what is it that I do? Well, I love good writing. I just, I read a good book and it thrills me, it excites me. I get totally wrapped up. It can be non-fiction. I've read a lot of non-fiction in the last few years, principally because I realized how unknowledgeable I am about even our own history, let alone the history of the world. And I'm looking for explanations for why we are at the place we are at this particular moment. And of course, this is not unprecedented. American history is loaded with tragedy and with terrible circumstances, slavery and genocide, Native Americans, and it's recycled. And I keep waiting. That's what Star Trek is I think becomes even more engaging and more appealing, because we keep saying, damn it, this doesn't have to be the way it is. We can achieve something more noble than a world that keeps repeating the same mistakes over and over again. So I do a lot of reading. I read some fiction, but I read a lot of history-based material. Other than that, there's more pedestrian kind of involvements. Like, I've been a baseball fan since the 1950s.
Ooh.
That's awesome.
And even though, alas, I was born in Chicago, I grew up in New York. In fact, I just did a podcast called "Go Fact Yourself," and the area of my expertise was the 1950s New York Yankees, and I did very well. I remember most of the players and what happened during the 50s. So I'm still a baseball fan. The other New York teams, the Rangers and the Knicks and the Giants, they haven't done very well in recent years, and I'm pretty much of a front runner. So I don't follow them as closely. But I don't know. I still enjoy meeting people. I still enjoy conversation and discussion. I am not very tolerant about people who have very strong right-wing sympathies. I have a problem with that. But I enjoy exchanging ideas. I guess that's pretty, I'm sorry I can't give you anything more exciting.
It is exciting. Come on. Everything we learn about you is exciting. So we'll start with our questions over here. Hi, how are you?
I'm good. My name's Steve from Lake Villa. I have to ask you, from all the lines you've ever done from any character, what's your favorite line that you ever said?
What's the famous character I've done?
Whatever character you've done many.
A favorite line.
What's your favorite line?
Favorite line? Favorite line.
Maybe looking at that Playboy centerfold?
Other than, thank you for my salary? I don't know if I have a favorite line. Can you tell me where the nuclear vessels are?
That's a great one. Thank you for kicking us off. Thank you. Hi.
You were kind of brought on the show as a counterpoint to the Cold War in the 60s. Could you talk about that? And then you've supported a lot of fan work over the years. What was your favorite fan work of Star Trek?
Well, I can answer the first question. I was not a controversial character on that show. Chekhov was so benign. The jokes he made about his patriotism were jokes. Oh yeah, we was invented by a little old lady from Leningrad. That didn't carry any powerful political potency. It wasn't speechifying. It wasn't being on a soapbox. Additionally, it's a character that really appealed to the very young. My audience was 8 to 12, pretty much. Line paper and pencil, and you're groovy, and you have groovy hair. Well, we know about that. So I didn't receive any kind of mail that would suggest anything other than the purpose of my character was being rewarded, was successful, and that was to appeal to that audience. So I never got any mail like that. I never got any hate mail. I never got any mail of, what are you doing? This is the Cold War, and you're playing a Rusky and all that kind of commie bastard or something. I didn't get any of that. So it was not a part of my life. And what was the other part of the question?
The other part was the fan projects that you've supported over the years, Renegades or other, web series and the Tim Russ film.
Well, I enjoy doing it. I enjoy working. I'm an actor. Give me a part that has some. I've turned down things. Not a whole lot of things, but I've turned down at least a half a dozen projects because I found them offensive. One was an important role, and I read, and the guy gave me the part as soon as I finished reading. Then I went home and I read the script, and I found out that my character gets his head cut off, and it's eaten by a dog. And I said, nah, I don't want to do that. It was so exploitative and so horror for horror's sake. You give me a substantial story and there's horror in it. I can balance it. I can weigh it and say, well, what are the redeeming qualities here? Well, what is it? What is the message? And if the message is one that I can support, then I probably do it. But gore for gore's sake doesn't appeal to me. So there have been a couple like that, and then I was invited to do a pornographic Star Trek.
That's interesting.
Yeah. And the enticement was that I'd get to do the lead. I said no to that. Do you want to make love?
I have so many questions about that project that I won't ask. But you do talk, you talked about history and enjoying reading nonfiction and events over the last century. Is there a specific period in time that you'd like to put on screen? Let's just say there's no financial constraints and a production company comes and says, Walter, write us a great movie about this event. What would that be?
Can you say that again? There's a reverberation here that I'm having.
In all the historical events in the last century, is there one that you'd love to bring to the screen?
Oh, that's an interesting question. I can see why you're the moderator.
Just wait till my questions about that porn film you turned down.
Interesting. Gee, I don't know. You know, I came pretty close. Now this is going to sound weird. Just after giving you this other sense I have about stuff that I don't want to do, I came very close to being to portraying Charles Manson in Helter Skelter. And that's a pretty horrific person and ideology and makeup, but it was such a challenge artistically, to find the essence of this character and why he was who he was, that I really looked forward to doing that. I didn't get the part. They got a terrific actor named Steve Railsback, who was a protege of Elia Kazan, who had directed Streetcar Named Desire and On the Waterfront and was an amazing director. And ultimately they went with him. But I was the only guy they found on the West Coast who they felt could do the role. Steve Railsback did it, and he was terrific in it. So I guess, I don't know, a role that would somehow, I'm so conscious of our political state and where we are and how scary it is, that anything that could provide hope and provide a way that we could find some homogeneity and be a more amicable society, an amicable world where we can all, call each other brother and sister. Anything that was well written, that wasn't preachy, but that was supportive of that philosophy, I think would be interesting doing it, and I would feel would be time well spent. I don't know of anything offhand. I think I might be interested. I just finished reading a book about the Spanish Civil War, when Franco was trying to take over the Spanish government. There's lots of lessons to be learned there. That took place just before the Second World War, and Franco was definitely a fascist. But there are lessons to be learned by understanding how the enemy operates and how they achieve their goals and what draws people to them and how to overcome that and how to come together and bring unity and humanity to the world. So I'd be interested in doing some kind of propaganda film that was dramatically literate and had a message. I think a message that I support. I'd be interested in doing. I also love doing comedy. So you come to me with a funny character. In fact, I'm going to do a scene in an independent film in Oregon where I played the proprietor of a porno shop. So it's funny. So I'm going to do that in April. I'm also writing a novel. Whether I'll ever finish it, whether I'll live long enough to finish it, is moot. But it's an interesting concept about a serial killer, but from the point of view mostly of the victims and who they are and what their little stories are. It's like short stories about the victims who end up being murdered by the end of the story. And at the same time, I'm developing who the murderer is from childhood with flashbacks, and it's a challenge. And an amazing thing is, and if I believed in such things, I'd say that this would be the reason why I am not going to give up on this, is I have to know more about police than I do, police officers. I ran into 2 women in the airport in LA who were coming to Chicago who were retired police officers. And we talked for about an hour and a half. They gave me their email addresses, and I'm going to be emailing them. Pardon? Are you here? They're here.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. But you're not the same one, but you're still a police officer. Okay, well there's a third for you, Walter.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, they're here. It's meant to be. I have to do this book. So that's what I'm mostly preoccupied and involved with this moment.
That book sounds amazing. Definitely you have to finish that. It sounds really good. We'll go over here to our meteorologist. Hi.
Hi, yeah, I take full responsibility for the cold. It's kind of with the job. Hi, I'm Katie. I'm from Sioux City, Iowa. Thank you for being here.
Sioux City, Iowa?
Sioux City, Iowa, although I live in the South Dakota side because less tax.
Sioux City, Sioux.
Yeah.
Sioux City, Sioux.
It's a great...
I went to college in Grinnell.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Oh, it's...
Terrible experience. Big city kid going to a town of 5,000 people.
It's a big change.
It's called taller. The motto was taller corn and higher education.
That's good.
The education was fine. I wasn't that into corn.
Yeah. Well,
Anyway, I'm sorry.
Oh, you're good. I was wondering, you are rocking a phenomenal sweater right now, but if you were to wear a costume at any convention of any character, whose character would you want to cosplay as?
Good question.
Wow, I didn't think at this juncture in my convention going that I would hear questions that I've never heard before.
No way!
It's amazing. A costume. Would it give me the powers that
For fun, yes.
Yes, sure.
Well, anybody else want to be Superman? I don't know. No, I think even as a kid, when I dressed up for Halloween, I probably dressed as a transvestite or something. Just as a woman, or I don't know.
You could do Rocky Horror Picture Show.
Which?
Rocky Horror Picture Show?
Oh, I was too old for that already. I mean, I'm talking about 10 or 12. That was 1948 we're talking about.
Oh no, you could do it now. I could totally see you as Dr. Frankenfurter.
Could you? Okay. Would you throw things at me?
I mean, I gotta say, I think it'd be a huge hit.
So I don't have a good answer for that. I'm sorry.
No worries. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Thank you. Hi.
How do you do, sir? I'm Pearson from Hoffman Estates, and this will probably be one of the stranger questions you've heard. Okay, given a choice between a peaceful, relaxing lunch with good old Russian boy Chekhov, or a lavish, full-course dinner with Alfred Bester, who would you choose to spend your meal with? Given that Chekhov's a good old boy and Bester is, well, Bester.
That is the most preposterous question I've ever been asked.
Thank you! I did.
Does he have to play both the parts?
No. I just said if the situation. I know. It is preposterous, but.
Well, does it have to be lavish?
With Bester, he doesn't do things halfway.
I see. Okay. Can I eat just a little bit?
So your choice would be Bester.
Yeah, I guess it would be Bester. Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much, sir.
What would your choice be?
Well, there's an old saying: better a crumb in peace than a feast in anxiety. In other words, I'd go for a good old boy Chekhov.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's 2 good questions in a row, so the pressure's on.
Well, different. I'm not sure they're good. They're different.
How are you?
Hi, I'm Bonnie from Glendale Heights. I guess my question is boring now. Is there a type of role that you have yet to play that you really would like to do? Like be the comedian of the show or be
I would love
a band member?
I would love to. You know, most of the comedy I've done has been in theater, and a lot of it's dark humor. I did a play called The White House Murder Case by Jules Pfeiffer, where I played a CIA agent who had been engaged in war and had been suffering the consequences of a poison that had been released into the atmosphere that made him literally fall apart, physically fall apart. And when one juncture, I say, "Hey, look what just came off." It was very dark comedy. I thoroughly enjoyed that. I did a play called Steam Bath about a Puerto Rican towel attendant who was really God and was giving orders from the steam bath to what happens to people all over the world. That was great fun to do. I played Scrooge. I played Scrooge for 5 years, and there's a lot of humor in Scrooge, so that was fun. I think, yeah, at this point, if I had a really meaty comedy role, I would glorify in that.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi, my name is Chana Song Lamar. I'm from Waukegan. And I have a thank you instead of a question, a personal thank to you. In 1975, at the first Star Trek convention in Chicago, I did the artwork for the program book, got everybody's signatures, and was personal bodyguard for Leonard Nimoy. I was because of that, my room was on the same floor with all the celebrities, and I was passing a door that was opened, and a friend asked me in. I went in and sat down. There were several people there, including you. And Harlan Ellison came into the room, and he says, "Who is this person in my room?" And Lucy, who asked me, sort of cringed, and you said, "I did." And because of that, because he said, "Oh, okay," and we sat and we watched him on TV, sitting in the room commentating on him on TV in an interview. And because of that, afterwards, over 7 years, whenever I was at a convention with him, he recognized me and helped me with my writing, took me to dinner, went and sat in a bar drinking more than I should have, and got me writing enough that I was published in 7 different science fiction magazines.
Oh, great.
Doing articles on Star Trek.
Ah.
And now at 73, this year, January, I published my first short story.
Hey, great.
And I thank you.
That just gave me the chills. That is such an amazing story. Walter, you're amazing. You're responsible for her career.
Very amazing.
Also making her feel good in a social situation.
You're welcome. Whoop.
Hi.
Hi.
We'll go over to this side now. Over this way. Right over there.
Hi.
Raise your hand.
Gotcha.
Hi, my name is Ariel. I'm from Chicagoland, born and raised. And my question is for you, is that what lessons can we take from science fiction, sci-fi, Star Trek and beyond, to help us build a better today?
Say it again.
Yeah, so what lessons can we take from science fiction to help us build a better tomorrow?
What can we take?
Yeah, what
Maybe a
lesson?
philosophy.
Yes.
IDIC or,
How
you
do we
know.
build? Oh, from Star Trek.
Or other science fiction, just fiction in general. How can we use the groundbreaking things that happen in science fiction to help us open doors and help us build a better foundation for the future?
Well, I think the ingredients are there. They're in everybody. All of the humanity that we see presented in our best people is there in everyone. It's a matter of supporting that and fortifying it and appreciating that to make people want to be the best they can be. We have it in us, in all of us. We have a very complex genetic makeup. We're aggressive because when Homo sapiens first walked the earth, they were in mortal fear of their lives every day. You know, they were enemies, and they needed to be able to be aggressive and to respond and to fight back. The problem is all of those genetics, all of that makeup is still there. We have evolved intellectually. We can apply that aggression, not with clubs and sticks, but with bombs that can destroy a city. So our intellectual capacity has grown, but our basic primitive values are still there. And it's a matter of cultivating ourselves to emphasize, and I'm not telling you this to anybody who doesn't know it. You all know this. I don't mean to sound patronizing, but we need to be able to find that in ourselves and to reinforce it and to make that a driving impulse in how we deal with each other. And if we do that, and we agree that we've all got a right to be ourselves and to be and it is our part of our destiny to look out for each other and care about others, then we can be a more optimal, more positive world. It's so depressing to me that we just keep recycling stuff. When Barack Obama became president, I said, thank God I have lived as long as I have to see this happen. And I was so proud to be an American, to see this happen. And he didn't disappoint me. Being a politician has its drawbacks. Nobody can be perfect. Nobody can be without sin. My police officers told me that. But to see us regress to the point we've regressed to, and I'm afraid it's not over. That's disillusioning, and that makes me feel like, when are we going to find the magic formula to move forward and take 3 steps forward and only 1 back? Right now we're taking 1 step forward, it seems to me, and 1 back. And I'm waiting for the time, and I don't know if, with all the history of mankind, we've been here literally for about 300,000 years. With all that history, we're still fighting the same battles. We're still tormented by the same issues. We're still on a path to self-destruction. Not everybody, God knows. Star Trek fans are beautiful. I love them. I really do. Because the more people I meet, the more I see the promise of what the world can become and who the people can be. But I don't know of any immediate solution.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. That was a great question. Thank you so much. Hi.
Hi, I'm Corey. I'm from Iowa. And first off, I just want to say that was a beautiful speech. And second, I was wondering if someone had told you back when you signed on to be in the original Star Trek series that it would someday become this insane phenomenon it is today, would you have believed them?
Well, I think I answered that before. No, I wouldn't. No one would have. I mean, it's just an amazing thing, and I think it's going to be used in the future. It'll be part of textbook history. I mean, the people will use it and delve into the sociological reasons why it has persisted and been perpetuated the way it has, and it'll be part of course structure in schools. And how does it relate, and what do we learn from it in terms of the way history has progressed? Because it is such an extraordinary phenomenon. And I don't think it is quite like anything else. I do think it has that uniqueness about it. And as I say, as a consequence, I think it'll be a story that we can learn from.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Hi.
Hi, my name is Brian from Chicago. After all this history you've lived through and done, how do you want to be remembered?
How do I want to be remembered?
Yes.
Is that somebody in the audience? Is there a dog that doesn't like me back there? I love dogs. You just gotta know me. How do I want to be remembered? Well, it's embarrassing. It's embarrassing. I'm being so freaking candid, I'm going to regret it tomorrow. I want to be remembered as being talented and intelligent. That's the way I want to be remembered. Secondarily, I want to remember it as being an okay guy, somebody that people would relate to. That's important as well.
So Walter, let me ask you this. I've been thinking about your political movie that you're going to make. I'm back here, by the way. And I've decided that with no political opinion or affiliations, but you would be a great Bernie Sanders. And so someone needs to write that movie for you. You could play him. And now we'll go to your question.
Is there a question? I didn't hear.
Go ahead.
Just following up on the idea that you said.
Oh, wait a second. What happened to the voice?
It's the voice of God. It was me. But now we're on to him. Did you hear me say you'd be a good Bernie Sanders? That would be your entry into playing a political figure.
Yeah.
Not saying it would be a movie about positive change or negative change, just a person you could play.
Okay, I get it. I voted for him in the primary in 2016. I don't know who to vote for. Anyone who can win, who can beat Trump. That's pretty much what I thought you had an awfully
a nice voice for him.
soprano voice there.
If you ever want someone to play you, I'm into it. Now go ahead, please.
Following up on the point that you were saying that one day Star Trek would be taught in textbooks because it affects our society. Actually, in my social studies books, we read about the christening of the NASA Space Shuttle Enterprise, that pretty much the cast was present because Star Trek was that much of representing American and even like worldwide hopes for the future and advancement that they've already become intertwined, and we're already teaching kids about that.
Right. Well, that's quite true. And that was one of the most dynamic moments that that I've ever had regarding Star Trek, being there at that rollout and realizing that we were not just a television show, that we really were part of the fabric, we were part of this societal fabric, that we had become part of the life. It wasn't just something you turned off and you said, well, that was an interesting hour, and now what's on? So I found it to be extremely significant, and I knew that we're talking about the rollout of the shuttlecraft, and we were all invited to attend that, and we're waiting, and there was a lot of journalists and photographers, and there was the Air Force band, and when the ceremony actually began, the band leader waved his baton, and the band started playing the theme music from Star Trek to the rollout of the Enterprise shuttlecraft, which is an amazing moment, just the most thrilling, spine-chilling experience I've had. And that's when I said, holy cow, we're just not paid employers who bitch about the craft services, there's a place in our world that we actually fit beyond simply being an entertainment. So yes, you're absolutely right about that. I just think as we are faced with this kind of circumstances we are today, it'll be even more viable subject to be part of the academic world.
Thank you. Thank you for bringing that up. And we have time for one more question, so we'll go over here to this lovely lady. Hi.
Thank you. That was an amazing story. I feel like that was a high note. I hate to off-track that. You, in my memory, besides Kate Mulgrew, who I saw speaking last year, are the only two actors from any of the Star Trek series that I've heard discussing literature. And you've mentioned fiction, and you've mentioned biography, and her recommendation was read all the Russian authors, and then read all the French authors. If you're talking fiction, and my book club thanks you in advance, who would you recommend by way of fiction? It's hard.
Yeah, and I don't remember names very well. I remember that the first novel that really captured my imagination and excited me, well, maybe it wasn't the first, but certainly Dostoevsky, Crime and Punishment. Because there was such a psychological underpinning to the story, which I wasn't used to reading. I wasn't used to the author getting so involved in psychological motivation. And that's always been important to me. And that's the way I write. I write from that point of view. Where is this character coming from? What does he believe? Why does he believe what he does? Can I justify? Can I justify something that might otherwise be considered heinous because of a broader philosophical nature? We talk about in Star Trek not the good of the sum equals, what is the term? The Spock?
The needs of the many.
What?
The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few.
Yeah. That in itself is I think worthy of an evening's conversation. I don't know if it's I truly don't know if it can be justified that one person can be sacrificed for the rest of humanity. I don't know. I mean, it tells me, there's a part of me that says yes, if it means saving all those other lives. There's part of me that says we have no right to do that to even one person. So I haven't resolved any of those kind of issues. And as far as writers concerned, and particularly foreign European writers, there are probably some, but I can't call them up. I'd have to think about it. Sorry.
I'm looking forward to your book.
Let's hope it gets done.
Thank you so much. And Walter, with that, I can't believe it, but we're out of time. Did you guys enjoy this hour? A huge round of applause for Walter Koenig!
Hi, this is Aaron Ashmore, and you are watching Fandom Spotlight. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe like now. Oh, and have fun and follow your fandom.